All right, welcome everybody to the panel Partners or Silos, Reimagining Education and Workforce Development. My name's Andy Hall. I'm with the San Diego Workforce Partnership. You'll hear from each of our guests and they'll introduce themselves as well. We're not going to do big bios. You have that in your agenda briefings, and so we'll just get right into it. I also realize they're setting up drinks outside. I'm not against anyone going out and grabbing one and coming in. I don't know about the organizers. But the way that these have been going in the afternoon have been smaller groups. So I'm going to pause every now and then during the conversation to see if there's any comments or questions to make it conversational. I find those things are the way that's often the best way to do it. So raise your hand if you have a burning question. I'll also try to figure out some time to ask questions at the end. So I'm going to introduce our panels, and then we're going to hear from each one of them here in a second about the topic. First, to my immediate left is Dr. David Miyashiro, the superintendent of Cajon Valley Union School District. To his left is Dr. Julianna Barnes, president of Cuyamaca College. And then to her left is the Honorable Mayor Bill Wells, mayor of the city of El Cajon. Many of you who are from out of town come to San Diego and you see the bays and the beaches and this nice hotel and maybe go to the baseball game at Petco and go down to the gas lamp. But what you might not know is that the city of San Diego is just less than half of the county of San Diego. Our region has a majority of the county is actually considered rural by the federal definition of a rural area. That was a fun fact that I learned the other day. It is the 5th largest county in the country, the 2nd in the state of California, and also receives the largest number of refugees of any county in the state of California. And in particular in El Cajon, there is one of the largest Iraqi refugee resettlement communities in the region. And lastly, the city of El Cajon, which is what we're going to be talking about, has about 100,000 residents. And I just learned this morning that the NASCAR driver Jimmy Johnson is from El Cajon. So that was another fun fact that I learned. And so the county of San Diego is a lot more than bays and beaches in the downtown Hyatt. We're glad that you're here to learn a little bit about it. And I think really this panel is going to be zeroing in specifically on what innovation and bridging the skills gap looks like in a specific community. I think sometimes we talk about really big concepts, and sometimes it's really hard to understand what we actually mean, but this panel is really designed to get specific about what's happening in the city of El Cajon with some of these great leaders here that I have to my left. So we did have a video to explain the world of work, but sometimes those things don't work out. So I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Miyashiro to introduce a little bit of the concept of the world of work that's happening in Cajon Valley and really set the stage for the rest of the conversation.
Well, thank you. Super excited to finally be working with Dr. Barnes, and Mayor Wells and I have been working together for 7 years now. But I'll start with Jimmy Johnson since you brought it up. Jimmy Johnson went to Crest Elementary School, and Mayor Wells hosted an event probably about 4 years ago where we renamed one of the streets Jimmy Johnson Street. And a lot of his teachers and his friends and the neighborhood came out to celebrate. One of his teachers was in the front row, and Jimmy called her out and said, "You told me when I was in your class that I would never be a professional race car driver." And she said, "I told you so." And he said, "No, it worked out for me." But his interests were to ride in the hills, at that time on bikes and dirt bikes, and he talked about his childhood, about being able to explore in the mountains and backwoods, the things he wanted to do outside of school. And the world of work brings those interests and opportunities into the classroom. And Mayor Wells and his team are a big proponent of using the community, our chamber, and businesses as a backdrop for teaching our kids about opportunities if they want to live, work, play, and raise a family right here in El Cajon.
Great, and if we were able to show the video, you'd see these young people gaining these career experiences at I think it was a digital marketing shop, at the local police station, at several other of these the faces of these young people just light up. And the question I have for you first, David, and then I'll turn it over to Julianna, is these experiences and these exposures are great for kids, certainly, but what about test scores? If your district is focused on the world of work and helping kids explore their career interests, are you neglecting test scores? And if so, and test scores don't improve or go down, isn't this whole thing just a house of cards? How would you respond to that?
In my first 2 principalships, when I was about 20 years ago, a school principal in the No Child Left Behind era, we were solely measured by test scores. And so we became, as a principal, the New England Patriots of standardized testing. So I took over one of the lowest performing schools in the state of California, and it was in program improvement. That means if you don't improve your test scores, you're going to be taken over by the state. And so we narrowed our focus took away the arts, took away lots of the special programs, and focused on teaching kids how to bubble a little test and get the right answer. Our test scores rose. We got into a Title I achieving school category, and one of the teachers came crying into my office and said, "David, we didn't do a damn thing for these kids." And what she was talking about was one of our former students who was proficient and did well on the test came back with a baby that she went to Texas to have. And not only that, she was proud to show us her child, the 16-year-old girl, and just perpetuating the story of generational gangs and getting pregnant in high school. And even though we improved the test scores of these kids, we didn't change any outcomes. And so the outcomes that we met, actually I met Peter and you gave us data that said in the East County of San Diego, we lead the region in opportunity youth. And opportunity youth are kids that are age 16 to 24 that are not working and not in school. That's a really bad category to be leading in. And so we could incrementally improve test scores to try to change that. But when we met with Bill, the city manager, Doug Williford at the time, they said, if you want to change outcomes, you have to change what you're doing. And that's really where this came from.
Thanks for that, David. Julianna, I want to shift over to you. I mean, the state of California, there's not a lot of community colleges here at this conference, and at least in the panels that I've been on. The state of California has just passed a budget of $11.1 billion with a B dollars for the California community college system, and large chunks of that money are focused on this topic of bridging the gap between college or education and the world of work. Julianna, the primary mechanism of funding for community colleges is still enrollments in accredited courses, maybe traditional education. So could you talk a little bit about what this investment means for your college, maybe East County of San Diego, and this partnership to potentially bridge the world of work between public education and the workplace?
Sure, I'm happy to. So, gosh, I did not realize that we didn't have that many community colleges present, but just so for context, you're in California, y'all, and actually, we don't say y'all in California, but there are 116 community colleges in California, and we are the largest segment of higher education in the nation, serving more than 2 million students. And so interesting that we don't have more representation here, but what's happening in the California community colleges, and I do want to give credit to the state chancellor over all 116 community colleges. He's here, Chancellor Oakley, saw him in the hall, for really identifying kind of that workforce development is a critical priority for the community colleges. And so, as you mentioned, Andy, there's a huge investment. About 5 years ago, what we passed was the Strong Workforce Initiative in California. And this is an initiative that will fund about $250 million infused into the community colleges to really invigorate partnerships with the K-12, the community colleges, higher ed, with our local agencies and industry to ensure that we're basically filling the skills gap. In California here, the PPIC, Public Policy Institute of California, identified that there'd be about 1 million jobs that require degrees or certificates that could be fulfilled in the community colleges by 2025. And so we really have our eye on that North Star to really fill that gap. And again, this is ongoing monies that we will see in the community colleges. And then on top of that, we actually just changed our funding formula. Like a lot of institutions, we used to just get funded based on butts and seats, to be honest with you, based on enrollment. And now part of our funding formula does provide fundings for equitable outcomes, including some of our workforce development outcomes. So there's really an incentive as well for us to ensure that we're meeting those outcomes. But of course, the biggest incentive is that we know that students come to us with their hopes and dreams. They want to change their lives, and they want to earn a living wage, and that's what we're intending to do.
Thanks, Julianna. And David and Julianna both talked about shifting towards an outcomes orientation. So are we actually changing the lives of the students? Mayor Wells, I'd love to hear your perspective on why you got involved with some of this work that David and the school district at Cajon Valley are leading to expose young people to their career skills in the world of work. And what would it mean for your community to have this seamless integration between kindergarten and maybe even pre-K coming all the way through the community college system and connected with local businesses? What would that mean for the city of El Cajon?
First off, I want to thank everybody for having us here today, and thanks to Dr. Miyashiro. That's a really interesting question, and I think the cities, most mayors of most cities, they would have a very different perspective than educators. And I think I'm really pleased that, at least in our city, we work closely with the community college district, the high school district, and the elementary school district. And I think we all listen to each other, we respect each other. And I think that's good for the kids, because in the end, what the city needs to move forward into the next few decades may be different what the needs are for education. I come from a city that's very unique. We have some of the poorest areas of San Diego County, because back in the 50s and 60s, they built a lot of apartments on the city floor. But around the city, in the hills that surround the city, kind of like a donut, some of the highest priced real estate of all the cities in San Diego County. And then to add to that dichotomy, the mix there, is we also have a very large Chaldean population. Chaldeans are Iraqi Christians, they're Catholics, and they have come to America. They've settled in two places, basically. One is Michigan and one is El Cajon. So we are the third largest Chaldean city in the world, Baghdad, Dearborn, and then El Cajon. So you take into account all these things, we have different needs. And one of the things that we really need is, besides well-educated people, and I think an education is extremely important. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology, so I believe in education. But I also know that the world is changing, and that the needs of the world are also changing. I came to college at a time where everybody went to college. I was the first generation of everybody going to college. And at that point, they told us, all you have to do is get a college degree and you'll be fine. You get picked up by IBM or Merck or some other company like that, and you'll be fine for the rest of your life, because that's the key to moving forward. But now I see my kids are now in their mid-20s, and I see them and their friends, many college degrees amongst them, and many of them unemployed, working at much lower wage jobs than their college education prepared them for, massive amounts of debt, and no direction. And somebody mentioned to me the other day that he owns a construction company. He said, when's the last time you saw an electrical contractor or a HVAC person that was under 50? It doesn't happen anymore, because kids, I think we've let kids down to some degree by perpetuating this myth that the only way to be a productive human being is to be college educated. The piece of paper, the diploma, is really your entree into civilized society and being a successful person. So there's a disconnect where HVAC repair people make $100 an hour, and the guy from Purdue that's working at Best Buy makes $18 an hour, but the guy from Purdue feels good about his degree. So I'm saying this not to say that college is not important, and high school is not important, and elementary school is not important. It's massively important. But I think we all have to kind of wrap our heads around the new reality that there are other ways to be an integral part of the community without following along this traditional 1980s, down 40s through 80s kind of idea that the only way to get ahead is to go to college. And I want to tell you that Dr. Miyashiro understands this, and that's why his world of work, we're so excited about it, and he's getting praise from all over the country for this, because it is allowing kids to expand their minds into other directions. So I'm a politician. I talk too long. Give me a microphone. I'll keep talking. So I'll stop there. But thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wells. And David, I want to go to you a little bit. I think Mayor Wells brought up the idea of like college and career ready as a focus for the public education system, which I, as a workforce person, I agree with. And I now have a 1-year-old daughter. I'm a new father. And even though my career is supposed to be all about exposing my young one to all kinds of opportunities, whether that's a 4-year or not, in my head, I don't think I've ever verbalized it. I still want her to go to a 4-year degree school. So, like, am I a hypocrite? And or, like, what would you say to parents like me who are in your school district?
I would say she has 17 years to build a relationship with you that will show you what the right pathway for her is. And it may be a 4-year degree. But I had flashbacks going with Mayor Wells talking. We've been working together for 7 years now, and one of the first conversations I had was with my boss. Our board president right there said, go meet with the city leaders, go meet with the community leaders, get to know people, and make us part of the community, because our school district really wasn't integrated prior to. And I met with the city manager, Doug Williford, council members, and Mayor Wells, and they told me just what Bill articulated. I asked, okay, well, the city oversees city public works and the police department, the fire department. They oversee all the public agencies except the school district. If it were yours, what would you have us do? And they said, well, first, stop stigmatizing labor, especially the most important work in our country, which is in the Marines, the Navy, and the Air Force, which are right here in San Diego. Lots of civilian and non-civilian jobs to make a living. But also, do you know that East County builds San Diego County? We are home to the best manufacturers and developers and commercial real estate people in the world. And a lot of those jobs aren't straight paths out of high school. And by the way, can you teach children not to give up the second or third time and build some resilience and some social skills? Can you teach them how to look somebody in the eye and shake them? And all these things that they're asking us to do are not part of the curriculum. And so, yeah, it's just been a great relationship and working. And I met you, and you showed us what's happening in our local economy, how all these kids, they're not exposed to the priority sectors. And I hope you talk a little bit about that work and how that integrates across what we're doing together.
Yeah, thank you, David. And so, yeah, our workforce agency, and there's a workforce board in every county or city across the country, should be doing research on what are the fastest growing jobs, with a particular focus that pay a living wage where a family can buy a home and build wealth. And in particular, they should be focused on jobs that require less than a 4-year degree to get started. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of funding and financing and attention on getting someone through the 4-year and professional degree pathway. There's a lot less attention and information about how you can kind of get into some of these other non-4-year degree track jobs that pay good wages to buy homes, to Mayor Wells' point. And so that research has been taken up by Dr. David in Cajon Valley. And I'll have one more question for you, since I guess this is a technology conference. Can you talk about some of the technology tools and strategies of delivery you're using to get this information and these experiences into the hands of your students and their families? Sure.
Just quickly, our teachers and principals embraced the idea that every child would have ubiquitous access to Wi-Fi and their own device for learning. And the way we're using it is the way that the medical profession, the dental profession, other industries are using technology to do the blocking and tackling of teaching and learning, the more efficient parts, so that they can spend more time on the human connection with the students. And it's really been a less tech, more human approach, utilizing the best technologies and solutions.
Great. Thanks for that, David. And Julianna, I'm going to ask you this question. I think Mayor Wells will ask you this too. I think in the spirit of what ASU+GSV wanted this to be, for us to sometimes disagree. I saw a cartoon where the header was, why aren't our children ready for the jobs of the 21st century? And employers are pointing to four-year colleges are pointing to community colleges are pointing to K-12 system, the K-12 system's pointing to families, and the families are pointing at employers for employing them in jobs where they're working double shifts to make a living. And so everyone's pointing their finger around whose fault it is. When a child is not ready for the jobs in a given community, whose fault is that, and who should pay to bridge the gap?
Great question. But before I go there, I have to piggyback on something that Mayor Wells was saying and that you were just talking about right now with regard to kind of this bias toward four-year colleges. And I get that. But as you mentioned, I think many of us have our own family members or friends who have graduates of four-year colleges, and then they have this wonderful degree and they have a large debt and no job, right? And I think that's very common. That's a common occurrence. So one, we have 17 years to work on you to be sure that your daughter really does see the different pathways. And I think that's one of the things that community colleges do well, is they really connect students with career opportunities early on, real hands-on, tangible ways to go out into the workforce and earn a living wage. So I just wanted to say that. But whose fault is it? It's David's fault. The K through 12, and it is true to this day. Hate to say it, and we're doing a lot of partnership and good work right now. When students come, let's say underprepared to the college, we say, what's going on in the K through 12? They're coming, not prepared. And then when we, graduate students, the employers are telling us, what are y'all doing in the community colleges? You're not preparing the students the way we need them to be prepared. So the real answer, as we all know, it's a shared responsibility, right? And so obviously, I think right now, we're seeing this with the Strong Workforce Initiative in the California community colleges. We are required and we desire partnering with the K through 12. We are required and we desire partnering with business and industry. That's part of what we do with the Strong Workforce, because we understand that it is it's all of our responsibility to take this on.
Right. Mayor Wells, whose fault is it when our kids aren't ready, and who should pay for it?
Well, it's not my fault, I can say. Like I told you, I'm a politician. I got to get that out there, right? It's an incredibly tough question. But if you don't mind, I'm not going to sugarcoat things here. I'm going to tell you what I really think, and I'm oftentimes controversial. So if you get mad at me and hate me, then okay. It's all right. I think our society, American society, at a large percentage is at fault for this. If you look back at what education looked like, 1930s through the 1960s, it was competitive. Expectations were monumentally high. And we didn't have this concept that every child must go to college. Every child must have exactly the same opportunities. And that's where my belief system is, in that it's opportunity it's the opportunity that's important, not the outcome that's important. And you give kids an opportunity, and if they can't perform, then you guide them into something else they can perform in. We work hard to instill in American kids a belief that if you have the intellectual talent to be good at science, to be good at math, to be good at engineering, to be good at technology, then compete for those positions. And we as a society will reward you for that, move you along, not everybody, move you along into the training programs that will get you where you want to go. And then give opportunities to the people that are not skilled. I was not particularly skilled in mathematics. That's why I ended up being a psychologist. But there are, obviously there are different people that are skilled at different things. So I think we got, as a society, if I could wave a magic wand and say this is how I'd want things to be, I'd want us to get a little bit more serious about education and a lot less social focus, more focus on math and science and hardcore skills that will translate in the jobs. Now, being able to write a paper is one of those skills, and being able to speak in public is one of those skills, and so many other things. But to me, I think we got a little flabby educationally, and we are now on the other side of that, where very few kids are really applying themselves and working hard on these kind of skills. And a lot of kids are setting themselves up for a huge failure when they take these directions in life that are mostly academic and have no ability to translate into the modern world of success. And then they're surprised and devastated when they are not treated as they think they should be treated. And I think that's a wake-up call for us, and the adults in the room need to work hard to come together and figure out a solution to that.
Thanks for that. Superintendent, a response or a perspective on whose fault it is when the kids aren't ready?
Well, I would say that big government does have a role in to blame, but I would say it's K-12's fault. I agree with Julianna, it's our fault. And it's because our system, K-12, was designed in 1892 to meet the needs of industrialism, and they built it with 8 years of primary school, 4 years of high school, 7 disciplines, and period schedules to rotate through. That was built in 1892, and we haven't changed it since then. And I have some parents from Bostonia Global in the back. There they are. So I can't lie, they will call me out.
Shout out
I'm
to
going to tell the
Bostonia
truth.
Global.
But the reason that we're building a high school, that we're starting with our first freshman and sophomore class next year, is because our high school district doesn't see the need to change. And so we have an opportunity to have dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment, where our students can earn college credit while they're in high school and continue at Cuyamaca College and really have most of their college done without incurring any debt. The high school district says, no, we don't want that because our teachers want to teach the AP classes. If we do that, then the community college take all the smart kids. So they don't change and they don't provide kids with opportunities that are right here in our backyard. So we're excited to finally partner with you now that we have a bridge, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade with dual concurrent enrollment, job studies, internships, because prior to that, kids in El Cajon didn't have the opportunity. So now we open Bostonia Global and our kids have a pathway.
Yeah, and Julianna, can you talk a little bit about dual enrollment? Because I think that's something that doesn't happen enough between the high school, the community college transition and those bridge programs. And what would that mean for your college to get a high school from Cajon Valley School District having a dual enrollment program into your community college?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what's being said, I love what you're saying about how our systems were designed for students of yesteryear and not necessarily designed for students of today. We know, again, I'm California, so, we do have a very diverse community in the state and a very diverse community in El Cajon, which is the community that we serve. Yet, again, I do acknowledge that our systems were not necessarily designed for the diverse students that we serve. And so that's the whole piece on really making sure that we remove those barriers so that all students can succeed and that we see equitable outcomes. And one of the ways that we could do it, just to piggyback on what you're saying, Andy, is that providing these kind of seamless pathways for students transitioning from the high schools to higher education. And with dual enrollment, that allows obviously students to take courses concurrently whereby they're in high school and they're at the college taking classes at the same time, and they're getting dual credit as well. And some of those students, my daughter's one of them actually, because she's my daughter, but she already is done with over almost a year worth of credits by the time she graduated from high school through dual enrollment. So that's an opportunity that we have with the new high school, which I'm really thrilled about. And again, what that does is it exposes students early on, not only to college, but to the possibility of careers. I'm super excited about introducing Bostonia, for example, with some of our career technical education programs and careers that students maybe never thought about. Like, what do you mean a career in the water industry? What do you mean a career in graphic design? Like things like that, where students don't really think about that. By the way, I had a teacher from one of the school districts in El Cajon come to me in May who graduated. She was a longstanding teacher, and she said she visited Cuyamaca, learned about our water technology program. She quit her teaching job, and now she's in a career in water technology. And she said, I never even knew something like this existed. But that's the same with our students. They don't know, and I think dual enrollment provides that opportunity for exposure as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I hear a lot about the World of Work project that's going on in East County, San Diego, is how does a child aspire to a career that they don't know exists? And for example, how does a Chaldean refugee 7-year-old in Cajon Valley aspire to be a scientist on the Torrey Pines Mesa with or work at a company like Lumina or be a water, if they have never even been exposed to anyone in their family or anyone in their community that is in that career? And so yeah, really simply, how does a child aspire to a career they don't know exists? And so much of it, especially at early ages, is about exposure. We have 10 minutes, and I want to end with the same question for each of you, and I'll start with you, Mayor Wells. If the kids are ready, if and when we figure this out in the city of El Cajon specifically, what would that look like for El Cajon in 5 years? What would the vision of El Cajon be if the kids were ready for the jobs?
Well, I think the city of El Cajon would be like probably any community. We want people to be happy. I think when you get right down to it, that's the whole role of government, is to help people pursue happiness, to keep them safe. So I would like to see kids coming out of the school system, the college system, with direction and purpose and aspirations and the ability to actually get there. Now, a lot of that, what you're saying is that if they don't know what's out there, how do you find something? There's, as one of the great things about being married, I sit in the room with all kinds of people from every walk of life and every kind of different career, and I find out about all these really interesting things I wish I had known about when I was a kid. But back when I was in school, they didn't teach us anything about that. They said, get good SAT scores. That's it. So anyway, I would like to see people coming out and being interested in becoming doctors and lawyers and nurses, but also becoming firefighters and cops and electrical contractors and builders and real estate people, and have the skills to be successful in that, and to not feel like they're under the 8 ball somehow, and that society has crushed them in some way. And obviously debt is part of that. But so that would be my utopian idea, that everybody would be happy and find their purpose.
Thank you, Mayor. Julianna, where do you see this work going in East County of San Diego with this connection between K-12 and employers?
Right. Just again, I like to piggyback a lot. So I think to piggyback on what you shared, I think we have a lot of work to do, not just in higher education, but I think as community leaders, industry leaders, to provide that early exposure to students. My own daughter just graduated from 4-year college, and this is a sin on my end. Toward the end, she's like, I don't know what I want to do, and I'm like, oh my God, you're killing me right now. But same, and this is a very prominent university, that she went to, and I thought, what's going on at the university where they're not providing early exposure and opportunity to my daughter and other students like her? And so again, I think that's incumbent upon all of us. So I see in the next 5 years that we do a better job in partnership with again, K through 12, our community leaders, industry, to ensure that we're clearly, providing some distinct opportunities to students so that they understand what job opportunities are and where they could earn a living wage and how they could actually get there, whether it be through the 4-year pathway or the community college. or some other modality. So I would love to see that. I do see that with the community colleges, we'll continue to fund workforce development more distinctly, and we'll continue to incentivize colleges to be sure that we have those equitable outcomes in the end, because if we're not really producing those equitable outcomes in the end, we're not going to end up getting funded. And obviously, in the bottom line, we're in the business, just like you shared as the mayor of El Cajon, we're in the business of changing lives. People ask me that all the time. What does a college president do anyway? And I say I change lives, and that's really what I do. And so in 5 years, that's what that would look like.
That's good. I also have a hard time explaining to my mom what I do every day. David, actually, I have two questions to close, and then we have maybe a few minutes for questions. One, I kind of alluded to this in the beginning, but your district's strategic focus is on the whole child and the whole family and on exposure in the world of work. Will the test scores be there in 5 years?
Maybe. But what I hope for is what Bill started with. He said happy. The vision of our district is happy kids engaged in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment. And grades and test scores are important, but gainful employment and financial freedom is the end game for not just our children. And I'm going to leave a couple minutes because I hope you'll talk about our 2-generation strategy with the Launchpad. Yeah. But when we think about happy kids, it's not fluffy and soft, it's scientific. It's self-esteem, self-awareness, self-efficacy, healthy relationships, teaching kids from an early age to get to know their peers and the adults and cultivate tribes of people in our community. And then gainful employment, giving them exposure to careers early on. And what we've learned is that with you and the work, income mobility is something that we want for not just the children now, but their current parents. Mm-hmm. And using the tools we have to expose the whole family. So you want to share about the Launchpad and 2-generation? Yeah,
I will. And I think, and I asked twice about test scores because whenever I come across outside critics of what David and they're doing out in El Cajon, that's always what people ask. They say well, if there's no test scores, it doesn't matter. It's a house of cards. And when we've talked, or if I talk with your colleagues, you all have such a great response to that I wanted you all to hear. And the response is maybe, but that doesn't really matter. That's not why we're here. And I love that. So thanks for that. And that's why I kept coming back to that. Not because I really care that much about the test scores in Cajon Valley, because I love what they're doing. And one of those examples is reimagining the middle school's library into a career launchpad. And in that library, we've had members of our team and some of the research that we've done about jobs that are growing develop tools and technology and informational sheets, but also have events and practices for the children to do their RIASEC assessments to see what their strengths, interests, and values are and what their kind of career aspirations are, and line those up to what jobs are growing in San Diego and how you get there. And it's a physical, beautiful space in the school. And also, the next step for that partnership is to actually co-locate one of our career centers that we fund as the Workforce Development Board for the parents, because one of the leading indicators of a child's success in school is the economic security of the family and their parents. Unfortunately, that is one of the biggest indicators of child success in school. And so not only is the Cajon Valley School District obsessed with the child's experience, they know that the child's experience in school is really dictated on the family and the economic security of the family. And so David is bringing our organization in to provide job opportunities, training, financing, scholarships, that kind of thing for the parents of his children, because that's good for El Cajon and good for your children. And we've really appreciated you bringing us into that work.
Can I make one more point? Because our assistant superintendent, our amazing superintendent, is here. I'll get scolded if I don't mention what Karen has done with our literacy scores. It doesn't show up in a state test, but we've been able to increase our student literacy by 5 times over the last 2 years, utilizing a new technology called Beable, who we've built our World of Work curriculum into, so that students learn about careers, they learn about their lexile and their reading, and it gives them a trajectory to a career in mathematics or psychology, and it shows them where they need to read in order to get there. So it's all aligned now, and we do have a laser-like focus on growth.
Well, we we probably have a few minutes for questions. Actually, let's do questions after with just informally with the panelists. Let's thank all of our panelist members. And I'd say as you go back home, keep an eye out on El Cajon. I think there's some really special things happening. And so keep an eye out. So thank you all.